Please accept my sincere apologies on behalf of the writer and director of Monday's Superman, Lois, and more specifically to his mother. My mother is a huge fan of the show. But one of the things about her is that she despises cliffhangers, Jai Jamison said in an interview with TV Line. So I am certain that my mother is going to despise this. This is going to make her very angry. At the conclusion of the show's penultimate episode, the Man of Steel faced battle against a Doomsday that was supercharged and super pissed, and the odds are not in our hero's favor once again. In the midst of the mayhem that was unfolding in the downtown area of Smallville, Superman took a time to reassure his frightened family of how much they mean to him. He whispered, "I love you," to Lois out loud. However, before he could continue that sentence, Doomsday arrived with another crushing blow. "I always why," he said. "I wanted it to be an emotional hit and to end it on an unresolved note," Jamison explains, revealing that it was a reference to the first fight between Superman and Doomsday that took place in the previous season on Monday. His family is aware that the previous time this altered beast attacked Clark, it resulted in his death. This is something that they understand. It's just that we're really playing with the stakes of that particular moment. Moreover, it is a monument to the efforts of Alex, Michael, Bitsy, and Tyler. It was brought by all of them. Meanwhile, another conflict was brewing between Lex and Amanda, the latter of whom is finally beginning to see him for the waste of time he actually is. One of the things I love about Yvonne Chapman in that scene was when Lex turns on her and blows his lid, she doesn't back down. Jamison recalls. While it's possible that her affections for Lex impaired certain aspects of her judgment, it's equally important to note that she is a tough individual in her own right. Where does this leave Clark and his friends as we get closer to the series finale, which will take place the following week? What Jamison has to say about the situation is that our characters are at their wits' end. The point at which they will break is at hand. Despite the fact that Superman is doing everything in his power to hold his own against Doomsday, Lex has not yet released his final card. In order to achieve success in dealing with this monster, it is going to be necessary for everyone to work together. Additionally, Jamison mentions that he included a little fun in this episode, such as Clark playing with the boys, in order to get a taste of what could be lost in the event that Doomsday is successful. He describes the process of putting together this episode as difficult, although I was aware that I would be writing and directing an episode prior to the beginning of the season. I had the impression that it would be sooner. After then, the assignment was delivered, and I discovered that it was the episode that was the penultimate one. After I had finished processing the shock, I thought to myself, all right, let's dial in. How about we get it right? In anticipation of the conclusion of the Superman and Lois series, what are your thoughts? Do you have any significant forecasts? Desires? Worries? Leave them all in the comment section below. Despite the fact that the CW did not successfully distribute an official press release for the 9th episode of the new season, they did distribute an official teaser clip for the show. Consequently, that will serve as our source for this round of spoilers. Let's get down to business. First things first, of course. The title of this new episode, number 9, has been officially announced. The writers came to the conclusion that it should be called To Live and Die Again. It appears like episode 9 will include a number of sequences that are extremely intense, dramatic, scandalous, action-packed, suspenseful, fascinating, and emotional. The promo clip for episode 9 begins with a scene in which Lex Luthor is heard saying some extremely unsettling things to Clark, also known as Superman. He says, "You're no match for what's next, the young men." As well as Lois, they are riding on training wheels. She has no control over the situation. "I am going to succeed in acquiring everything that you have ever loved." After that, we have a scenario in which Jonathan tells Clark, "We need to take him out." Clark responds by saying, "That is not how we do things." Jonathan responds by saying, "Maybe it should be the preview clip for episode 9 also includes some action scenes." It appears that Jonathan and Jordan are in the air. it is observed that Lois is frantically scurrying around and doing other things. In addition to that, we were eventually successful in locating an official synopsis for the 9th episode of this current season. In its entirety, it is written as follows: Lois struggles against the fallout of the debate. Clark employs Luthor's strategies against him, as Jonathan and Jordan get ready for the fight that is about to become imminent. When Lex Luthor made his comeback at the conclusion of the 3rd season of Superman and Lois, the world of Superman and Lois was abruptly flipped entirely upside down throughout the entirety of the 4th and final season of the CW program. Lex's unyielding vengeance against Lois Lane and Clark Kent for putting him behind bars for 17 years on the basis of false charges and causing him to become estranged from his daughter Elizabeth has been the driving force behind the show. And just when Lois and Clark believe that they have accomplished their goal of turning the tables on Lex, the business magnate and criminal mastermind devises yet another strategy to continue tormenting them. Michael Cudlitz, who plays Lex Luthor in Superman and Lois, discusses his unconventional portrayal of the character in an interview with Consumer Business Reports (CBR). In this discourse, he explores the manner in which he tackled the iconic part, as well as his perceptions of Lex, which may differ from those of the audience. The actor also reflects on his experience directing the 8th episode of the 4th season of Superman and Lois, titled Sharp-Dressed Man, and what it was like to watch the show from the other side of the camera. Michael Cudlitz's anguish is the source of that wrath. He is experiencing intense anguish as a result of the death of his daughter. There is a connection between the daughter and his upbringing, as we saw in the flashbacks of his history. This hatred toward Lois and her family, as well as what they have done to him and the suffering that they have caused him, is the single most important factor that drives the action throughout the season, at least from a storytelling perspective. It wasn't until December of 2 years ago that I was cast in the role, but they started making inquiries about me in September. They did not know what course of action they were going to take. When they asked me whether I was interested in the role, I responded by saying, "Yeah, it's Lex Luthor, the original bad guy. I'm not even who I think comes to mind first, but that would be amazing." I went and watched the program and I fell in love with the show because it was very much evocative of a reimagining of the types of shows that I saw when I was a kid growing up, including series that were focused on families. My impression was that it was similar to Little House on the Prairie or The Waltons. I don't want to put it in the same category as something that is completely different. This was a show that was geared primarily toward families. There are not many examples of this on. It is not only a superhero program, but it is also not like Breaking Bad or the shows that I have been working on, such as Southland, in which there are anti-heroes. The atmosphere of this show is gloomy. Even if it does a little bit of rubbing into the world of darkness, it is, in all honesty, a feel-good program about the family, the parents, the children, and what it means to be a family. It even extends that concept to the community. For me, the anguish that Lex is going through, as well as the fact that it is tied to his daughter, seemed to fall into place thematically, and I thought that this made a great deal of sense. In light of everything else that is occurring on with Lex, all of the reasons why he is required to disagree with, despise Superman. I don't believe that this has ever been done before, at least not in live action, and it gives him a more human quality. In the comics, we make brief references to his family on occasion. Nevertheless, I do not believe that any of the storylines are motivated by the happenings in his family or the emotional experiences he has had in his life. The comics depict him as having a set of goals that he is driven to achieve. In an interview with CBR, Yvonne Chapman stated that Lex and Amanda were the antithesis of Lois and Clark. She also mentioned that Lex's pain and hatred prevent him from being with Elizabeth. What would you say about the process of investigating their character dynamic? Because of this, we are left with a greater number of questions than answers. In spite of the fact that she is still rather young, The woman who is in charge of this business is already extremely capable. Was this the kind of person that Lex envisioned his daughter to be when he first met Amanda? Is it possible that she could one day helm the business? It is obvious that this is not the case yet, based on the memories that we are witnessing in episode 5. What does he discover with her? Can you explain how Amanda fits into this? Would it be possible for Lex to find love and affection? Do you think this character will be able to fill this void? People are trying to convince us that there is, in fact, a partnership. After that, we are going to swiftly discover that everything is going to be turned upside down from its current position. The things that we believe to be true are not the case. She says, at one point we're partners and he just wants to crawl out of his skin. Like, where the hell would you get that idea? How dare you? Partners equals he goes from presumably finding warmth and support to immediately cutting that off. The fact that Lex performs that throughout his life, as his wife mentioned in episode 5, is it something that he does continuously? Due to the fact that we do not travel so far, we will never find out. In the same way that he is his own worst enemy, I believe that Lex is similarly to his daughter. It is impossible for him to have any happiness in his life since the goals he has set for himself are absolutely unattainable in every facet of his existence. Over the course of the 4th season of Superman Lois, there have been a number of flashbacks that have shed light on Lex's past, including the fact that he was subjected to abuse at the hands of his mother. How important was that in terms of being the foundation for your performance? There was no doubt about that. During my conversation with Brent Fletcher and Todd Helbing, who are the showrunners for Superman and Lois, I inquired about the universe in which we were establishing this. According to what they said, it's our own world, but we're taking elements from the other worlds, as all the worlds do. There are certain crossovers, pieces, and elements that would be present if you were to shake up every world and pull out little parts of them in order to construct a new world. In the suicide slums where Lex was raised, he was subjected to physical and emotional abuse at the hands of both his biological mother and his foster father. My opinion is that he did, in fact, kill his parents, despite the fact that we do not delve into it. In this hypothetical scenario, he manages to fix the brakes on the car, but in the process, he ends up killing his parents. When he is explaining to his daughter about these things that he did not do, that he did not kill those people, he feels as like he has sacrificed himself. He is completely destroyed, but the abuse is what shaped him into the person he is now. The same may be said for our entire world. It was incredible, it was terrifying, and it was a bunch of fun all at the same time. The first time we discussed the possibility of my appearing in that episode, which was before the season began, I was not intended to be a part of it. I was aware that I was going to be the director, and I informed them that, given that I was new to the program, I would prefer to thoroughly familiarize myself with the cast and crew. When I told them that I would prefer to direct an episode that took place later in the season, they responded by saying that they were quite certain about it. As a result of the fact that I was not going to be appearing in a few episodes, they stated that we are going to organize things in such a way that you will not be appearing in the episode that you are directing. When we were working on episode 2 or 3, they said, "We actually think you have to be in episode 8, but don't worry, you're not going to be in it that much." I responded by saying, "That would be great. It would take a lot off the table and it would be awesome." I answered, "That would be awesome, although I had never directed anything that I was in before. I have friends who have done it previously, and I made a few phone calls to make sure that I didn't do something foolish and that I avoided any obvious potholes." I became aware of the fact that it was a fairly substantial episode in terms of the narrative as we got closer and closer to watching it. We have just jumped in. The television format known as episodic is an intriguing beast. Everything has a purpose, and all of the strands that connect the episodes are tied to one another. Being a member of the cast and being present for every minute of the previous episode presents you with a distinct advantage. This is due to the fact that you are aware of the connections between the many threads, the things that are significant, and the appearances that are significant. Occasionally, the people who are talking are the least significant aspect of the scene. What we know and care about the most are the relationships between the characters and the looks that they exchange with one another. I believe that being so deeply embedded has some advantages, particularly when you are finishing up a show in which there are a great number of strands that are all beginning to come together and a great number of tales that not only need to be set up for payoff, but also need to be wrapped up. I believe that we performed an excellent job. We were successful in having a fantastic script, which is the most important thing. You have a fantastic script, you do a terrific job of preparing it, you work out all of the problems, and by the time you come to it, you execute it without any hesitation. Nothing else could possibly be the case than what it is. What's truly important is that the script is incredibly good and the performances are superb. The cast offered their support to me. Our director of photography, Mark Cohen, was great because there were several aspects of this show that I had never done before. I had never considered doing them before. It was the first time I had ever done a full green screen. I had never worked on a full green screen stage before, but we did have some green screen aspects and some physical effects on The Walking Dead. These elements included bringing the green screen out to set, on stage, or in outdoor shots. I had never flown anyone before now. You rely on those individuals who have attempted it in the past. The majority of the time, you listen to the people around you, you set up what you want, you ask for what you need, and then you get out of the way. You present your ideas, and they say things like, "This is great, this is not so great. We can't do this, but we can do that." What you do is let the folks who do it on a daily basis to make it happen. When Todd and Brent approached me and said, "We would love to have you write and direct an episode," I was like, cool. I had started working as a staff writer on day one in the room back in the year 2020, and over the course of all these years, I grew as a television writer and as a filmmaker. I also grew to love these characters, as well as my crew and everyone else that I was working with. When I agreed to it, I had no idea that it would turn out to be the penultimate moment of the contract. It was intended to be earlier in the season when we first started chatting to one another, and I went through the motions of saying, "All right, this is going to be a lot of fun." Following that, when I received the assignment, it stated that it was 409, and I thought to myself, oh, okay. Penultimate. Wonderful. There was not only the excitement, but also the pressures that came with attempting to create the penultimate episode of the series. Not just the season, but the entire series. Without a doubt, it was intimidating. The fact that the cast and crew were already familiar with you was probably beneficial. Completely. An episode from the previous season was directed by me. That particular episode of television was the very first one that I directed. Although I did not write that particular episode, it was a rather significant one. In spite of the fact that I had been working with the cast and crew for such a long time, it was still really intimidating. They were familiar with me. I was familiar with them. Being able to get in and get things done was a lot simpler than I had anticipated. Team Lois and Superman, as well as Lois and Clark Kent, are extremely popular among the residents of Smallville. It is known to them. Lois is coming in, she is losing advertisers for the Smallville Gazette, and all of these other things are coming into this episode. We do not know how things are playing out in terms of the larger community, but we do know that Lois is coming in. Therefore, on the local front, the people have their backs under control. The Gazette is obviously taking a hit coming into tonight's episode, and she needs to figure out a way to get her mojo back. However, when one considers the bigger picture of where the Gazette is at, and how it has definitely harmed Lois' reputation and other things, it is clear that the Gazette is in a precarious position. When it comes to Amanda McCoy, what exactly is going on in this episode? Amanda has been Lex's ride or die for a number of years now, and she was instrumental in the execution of a fantastic plan that was finally realized in the most recent episode. The goal was to not only bring Lois and her reputation to an end, but also to prepare Lex for his subsequent actions. In light of this, Amanda and Lex are as close as they have ever been for the time being. Amanda is of the opinion that they are more of a partnership than anything else, and that they are entering into it. This episode does a great job of bringing out the flaws, or more specifically, pointing out the potential foolishness of Amanda believing that she and Lex are true partners. In this episode, are you able to hint that there will be a character who is returning? There is a character who is making a comeback, and they are a part of Lois getting her groove back, or her mojo back. She is on a bit of an investigation run, and when you reach a point where you can't go any farther, you have to start from the very beginning. Therefore, it is necessary for Lois to return to the beginning of the situation and think out how she is going to find a means to stop Lex from carrying out his objectives.